Today, in a new series on the channel, or rather I should say a reboot, we're going to be taking a look at questions that you, the viewers, have submitted, so let's get right into it. Our first question comes from Nova42, which is, what is one rule that you wish more fields would adopt? And on the other end of the spectrum, what's one rule that you wish more fields would get rid of? So the rule that I would want to create is actually one that allows me to get rid of a rule as well. So we're kind of answering the question all in one answer. And that is, I think that more fields, specifically indoor fields, but it can work for outdoor fields as well, that they do different classes, they should make the limit for their field 1 joule or 1.1 joule. And by doing that, they get rid of the minimum engagement rule that so many indoor fields have. Nothing is more frustrating going to an indoor field, having there be a minimum engagement distance, and maybe it's like 8 feet, 10 feet. I've even seen some do like 15 feet, which is just crazy. You know, you go into a room, you see somebody, and you gotta do like the mental math of, well, am I gonna hit this person from too close? And usually for me, while I'm doing that mental math is when he just shoots me, and then I walk away frustrated. I think that this works really well for indoor fields, and I think that it's more viable now than it ever has been. If you look at a lot of popular airsoft brands out there right now, either they are HPA, which is super easy to adjust your velocity, or they have a quick chain spring in there. You're starting to see that a lot more in any sort of gun that has folding stocks. Even for M4s though, you know, Specna has one where you don't even have to take it out of the body, you just remove the buffer tube, it's super easy. So I think as more and more companies are coming out with ways to change your velocity, change your spring, you know, like the SIG MCX has that as well, I think this is a rule that more indoor fields should adopt. Is everybody gonna have the ability to use this? No, but I mean, on the opposite side of the spectrum, you know, if you look at outdoor fields, I see plenty of people who don't meet the chrono limits for those. So I think that by making it a lower energy requirement, specifically at indoor fields, yes, there's gonna be a few people that don't have anything that pass chrono, but I think that it's an issue that's pretty quickly remedied, whether, you know, it be a quick chain spring system, adjusting your HPA unit like we talked about, or, you know, just buy an indoor specific rifle. I have a gun that I only use in indoor fields. It's my HK MP5K, which, you know, tragically I broke it the last time I went to an indoor field. But this is something that has made indoor play much more enjoyable for me. I actually experienced this at a field out near Rochester, New York, called Bad Cat Airsoft. They do the no MED with the low joule limits, and I love it. I love not having to do that mental math. If I just come up on somebody, they're getting got. And you know, at 1 joule, 1.1 joule, airsoft doesn't sting that bad. Even getting shot in the places that suck, like your hands or your neck, I think that it's not an issue as well. I will say, it's something that Bad Cat does that I really enjoy. If you're gonna have no MED in an indoor field, I think you have to require a little bit more, you know, advanced or strict regulations on eye and face protection. They don't allow M-frames or anything like that. I think getting rid of shooting style goggles and requiring like the full goggles and a lower face protector is advisable in this sort of thing. But this is the #1 change that I've wanted to see from fields, and now that I've found somewhere that actually does that for me, not only does it make me enjoy indoor games more, but I've been going to there a lot. Reflex Gaming wants to know, what are my thoughts on 3D printing custom airsoft parts and mods? So just like everything in life, 3D printing has really revolutionized what we're able to do with custom parts. I think the uses in airsoft can be a little mixed though, and part of that depends on how good of a 3D printer you have, you know, the pattern itself that you're working with. So that being said, 3D printing in airsoft, I think small things, like especially, you know, adapters for the Odin speed loader, are one of the most useful things that I use 3D printing for. Being able to have a universal adapter or something that's specific for a type of magazine is super handy. I see a lot of people creating things like slides for their pistols or hand guards with 3D printing, you know, things like that. And I'm just not quite there for trusting those sort of things. When it's going to be something that has stress on it, like a lot of stress, that's where I start to get a little hesitant into it. I'll admit I'm not the biggest expert in 3D printing, but there's some things like hand guards that I just don't trust, and I think that there's better processes out there. On the manufacturing side of things, I think that this will allow people to prototype and test things much easier without having to go to like the actual materials to be made out of. So I think that I definitely, you know, like everything in life, 3D printing has its purposes. It allows us to do a lot of things for cheaper. However, there's some things that I'm not entirely sold on yet. There's some things that I would still want to be made with more traditional manufacturing methods. But I think that it definitely has a place in airsoft, and some of the things that I've seen with it are super cool for sure. Hey Woodnator, who is a channel member, wants to know, what's my dream optic setup with an unlimited budget? So if money wasn't an option, my answer is actually pretty simple. I'd want a EOTech with the flip-to-side G33 behind it, or excuse me, the one that goes below it, the Unity mounted ones. And I really want this setup because it allows you to do pretty much anything. Using the EOTech, you have your standard sort of dot sight that you would have. You know, like I primarily use like AR-15 level optics. So you have something that's honestly a little bit better than those right there. And then having the magnifier as well allows me to put this on a lot of different setups. I can put it on my machine gun. I can put it on things that are meant to be a little bit farther range. And also, I think it looks cool on pretty much everything. I could buy an Airsoft replica of these, however, there are two issues with that. One, fake EOTechs are mainly garbage compared to, you know, like your standard entry-level SIG, primary arms, whatever it may be, red dot. And then a lot of flip-to-side magnifiers aren't the best. There are some replica or, you know, some independent brands out there that are pretty decent, like Pinty, for example. However, I think that, you know, using the real EOTech magnifier, it's just really nice. The eye relief's better, the eye box is bigger for the left to right on it, and it's just a, you know, like it's a night and day difference. However, there's a reason why it's like 5 times the price of buying the Airsoft equivalent of that same setup. So hands down, that is what I would want. And I just want to say a big thank you for being a channel member. And I think this is a great opportunity to actually thank all the channel members who help make the BB Warrior possible. Becoming a channel member gives you some really cool perks. First off, you get a guaranteed spot in Roast My Kit, which is going to be coming back really, really soon. And it also gives you a guaranteed question in these Q&A videos. You also get other things like being able to watch videos early, exclusive roles on the Discord server, and even more. So if you want to learn about becoming a channel member and helping to support what I do, there's a link down in the description below, or if you're on PC, you can hit the join button next to my username. But let's get into the next question. Chair, in his profile picture, does not disappoint. How do I stay cool or hydrated on the airsoft field? I feel like water is one of those things that players don't think about until it's too late, and then it becomes uncomfortable to carry on your person. Something that also depends on, you know, your level of fitness, how hot it's going to be, things like that, is how much water do you carry. Back when I was using plate carriers all the time, hydration bladders would always be my go-to choice because it goes on your back, it's out of the way, they're easy to refill. However, now that I use more chest rigs, or, you know, maybe I'm using setups that or, you know, I want that back area of my plate carrier to be free. Say if I had a ruck, I don't want anything between the ruck and my body that could pop. I've started to use other things like Nalgene's or even like USGI canteens. I'm a big believer that if I can buy something for Airsoft that also has applications in real life without me looking like a total weirdo, I'm all about it. So using like Nalgene bottles, I can take those to the gym, I can bring them to work, and I don't look like a goober. So that's my preferred way right now. The other thing that I've noticed is that like canteen pouches, ones that are built specifically for them, work great as general purpose pouches. They can also hold night vision. So I tend to prefer to have those pouches on my kit versus, you know, a hydration bladder or, you know, like wearing a secondary one like a backpack on it. But that's also, you know, that's because of the type of games that I go to. I like having my back free for my ruck or maybe an assault pack. And again, I just don't want to deal with the bladder potentially popping, even though that's never happened to me. Shroom wants to know, what are your thoughts about the current Airsoft community in general? Is it toxic? What about for new players? So this is a loaded question, and this is going to be a loaded answer with it. I think the Airsoft community has always been toxic to an extent. I think that there's always going to be people who out there who want to help others, who want to make sure that brand new players succeed. However, this is a male-dominated hobby, and if you have more than one of those, you're going to notice that there's always cliques. There's always people who like to look down on others. So yeah, I think the Airsoft community does have some toxic aspects of it, but you know, that's always been the case. I think the form that you see that in is starting to change a little bit more. It used to be a lot of like, you know, way back in the day, like Facebook groups on Airsoft, or yeah, Airsoft Facebook groups were super popular back in the day. Now, so they're not really, there's still a couple out there. But yeah, I think there's always going to be people, you know, looking to get a rise out of people, looking to, you know, make fun of others. And there's always going to be people doing cringy stuff. Like don't get me wrong. Like I've done cringy stuff in Airsoft. I feel like everybody has, you know, the hobby to an extent can be, depending on how you think about it. So yeah, I think there's always going to be a level of toxicity to it, but I feel like that's a lot of hobbies in reality. And it's just a matter of, you know, focusing on the parts of this hobby that make you happy and just kind of blocking out those parts that don't, you know, like trolls and people who are trying to mess with others online, like they stop if nobody's paying attention to them. So like just don't engage is my best advice to avoid those parts of the community that are a little bit toxic for sure. Jonathan wants to know, how do you tune a gun to both be within power limits in close quarters, but accurate enough for medium ranges? Well, like we talked about with the rule change question, I would say that the best way to do that is to first off get a really good hop-up and barrel setup. That does so much for your airsoft gun. I meet a lot of players out there who think that the only thing that determines range is how hard their gearbox is shooting. However, in reality, if you get a nice 6.03 barrel, get a nice hop-up setup, you're gonna be golden. And also use the heaviest BBs that you can hop and that are allowed at your facility. Beyond that, if you need to focus on something that's going to be good for CQB but also have range when you go outdoor, again, look into something with a QC spring system. But using guns that I have that shoot a joule or less, I usually don't have issues outdoor. If I'm trying to make the 250-foot shot and somebody that's running across the field, yeah, I'm going to miss them. But if somebody's like on a corner and then I pull up on them 180, 200 feet away, with a 3.2, even with not a lot of joules behind it, it'll get there. Might be a hair slower, but in reality, that doesn't matter. So yeah, the best thing that you can do is use good BBs, get a good barrel, and a good hop-up setup. British Airsofter wants to know, do you use dummy night vision goggles? I have never owned dummy night vision, and it's one of those things that I don't think players should buy unless they're doing cosplay or they want it to look cool for photos. Having night vision on your helmet, even fake ones, which are lighter than the real ones in most cases, is going to put unnecessary strain on your neck and on your head. And if you're using an airsoft helmet that doesn't have a good suspension system, doesn't have good padding, it's just going to make you uncomfortable for no reason. And let's be honest, they don't look that cool when real night vision is so prolific in airsoft. I am excited to say, however, that the other day I did buy my first piece of night vision equipment. I just bought a Gen 3 PVS-14, so there'll be a lot of videos on night vision coming to the channel. I've been using night vision for years as a renter, but I'm happy to finally have my own night vision so that I can create stuff on the channel for you guys. But in terms of dummy night vision, it just doesn't serve any purpose, doesn't look super cool. I would just skip over it and buy something for your kit that's going to be more practical. Gavin wants to know, how do you think snipers should be used in MILSIM? I'll start this answer off by saying that the word MILSIM means different things to different people. My general consensus of what a MILSIM event is something that mimics a real military operation, so not like a big pickup game, essentially. There's great large-scale airsoft games, that's just not quite what I consider to be MILSIM. That being said, I think the ways that snipers should be used in the games that I go to is in very small numbers, and they need to be a part of the command staff. You need somebody who isn't going to be out there looking for kills. You need to find a sniper and a spotter as well, who are willing to take long walks in the woods, not see people, and be on their radios a lot. It's a lot more focus on the tactics and the technique rather than the cool rifle. That being said, if you just want to go to a big open play game, again, I think there should be some restrictions on how many there are, but at that point, there's just not a ton of organization to where they can be super effective. But if you're in something that's trying to simulate more of like a real military experience, I think there's ways to incorporate them, but it's not going to be, in the way that a lot of players think being a sniper actually is. Blades Boy wants to know, what's the furthest I've traveled for an airsoft game, and where would I like to go? The furthest one I ever did was, I'm trying to think, probably Camp Shelby in Mississippi, I think it is. Mississippi or Alabama, for Desert Fox events way back in the day. And to answer the other part of the question, I would love to go back there for a larger game like a MILSIM West Insurgency back when they did that. The next closest up is Guardian Center, and that was about 2 hours less, so I think it was 19 hours for Camp Shelby. That was from like me in the Northeast going all the way down to the South. It was a miserable car ride. If I had to go somewhere else or somewhere that I'd like to go that's still open, because Camp Shelby doesn't do airsoft anymore from my understanding, is George Air Force Base. That's where they do a couple of MILSIM West games a year, like a Force on Force and Insurgency. They also do Desert Fox events, Battle for Los Angeles there. I just want to go there before that place burns down. It's a tinderbox from my understanding, and everything is super flammable out there in the desert. So I would definitely like to play there before it definitely burns down. Get a chance to play there for sure. Spook Airsoft wants to know, assuming it's not winter, are gas blowback rifles becoming a more viable option for primary weapons nowadays versus a niche, unpractical option for the average airsoft player just attending weekend skirmishes? So I plan on doing a video on this once it gets a little bit warmer out so I can get some nice video to show you guys with it. But the spark notes of my feelings are that gas blowbacks are always going to be more inefficient and unpractical compared to AEGs. And the best thing that you can do to level the playing field is converting it to HPA with some sort of drum mag. That being said, that's like a $300 upgrade. Even if you don't own the HPA stuff, it's about $500. Gas blowbacks just don't shoot as fast, they don't shoot as consistently, and you can make gas blowbacks good, but at the same day, there's a lot of games where they just struggle to compete with AEGs. And I know there's going to be TM fanboys getting really mad at me in the comments, but hear me out. It's just, the amount of fire that you can put out with an AEG is significantly more. I feel like different sort of games, gas blowbacks can be closer in ability to AEGs, but if you're at a game where anybody can do full auto, AEGs are going to have you beat every single time. If you can bring your own ammo, AEGs are going to have you beat every time. The type of games where you're going to succeed with a gas blowback are going to be games with issued out ammo, so like my company, Gun Gamers Productions, or MILSIM West, and where riflemen are semi-auto. That helps level the playing field, and sure, an AEG can still bam their trigger a little bit faster than you, but the fact that you're not going up against 30 rounds a second when you're probably using semi-automatic so that your mag doesn't run out of gas, those are the best games where gas blowbacks are the closest. But then again, they are more fun. There's some days where I go out and I'm like, I don't want to be good at airsoft. I just want to have fun. Sometimes the realism is more what you care about. It's different. There's different priorities for different players, but I definitely think that there are certain games where it's more advantageous to have a gas blowback, or rather their deficiencies are less, they're less in your face. They're not as impactful. But yeah, I think that they're still not as good as AEGs. There's ways to get them pretty consistent with them. There's a channel, Explosive Enterprises, did a really good video about making gas blowbacks practical. You should check that out as well for some more on that. I'll be working on my own feelings about gas blowbacks in a future video, but again, those are just kind of the spark notes of it. Time to go to space. Does the algorithm of YouTube flag you as showing firearms content or not? Yes, and sometimes it's an issue, sometimes it is not. The thing about it is YouTube has a really hard time identifying when content is about real guns or fake guns. And when you're creating a YouTube video, you're actually uploading it and putting in the information, halfway through it, and I'll make sure to throw it on screen here, it'll ask you, be like, hey, does this video contain any of these things? And it's like, does it have swearing? Does it have hate speech? And then it asks, does it have firearms related content? And one of the first things is this shows fake guns. I'll have the actual wording on screen so you guys can see it. And most times they're cool with that. And they're like, okay, we'll let you monetize your video. And monetization on YouTube isn't just important in terms of making money to continue supporting this hobby, but it also helps with reach. Non-monetized videos just don't do as good because YouTube doesn't make money on them. The issue arises sometimes in thumbnails. When the rifle is really, really prominent, it'll have issues. A good example of this is the SIMA video that I did a week or two ago. That got flagged after a day, and the issue is I'm at the point on my channel where you can challenge YouTube on this and be like, hey, I think you made the wrong decision, but they don't look at it until it hits a certain, view count, or it might be views within a certain amount of time frame. I honestly can't remember. So some videos, I'm able to challenge it very quickly and it gets resolved, but other videos, the ones that maybe don't do quite as well, they will get flagged. And also, if something, 6 months later gets flagged, or they think that it's wrong and stuff that shouldn't be monetized on YouTube, they don't tell me. I just have to check every once in a while and see if stuff got demonetized, and then appeal it from there. So yeah, sometimes it does cause issues, but there's other times where, I've been doing this long enough now that I kind of have a good feeling of what I can get away with and what I can't in terms of putting stuff in my thumbnails. It is frustrating though. Nepa Airsoft wants to know, of course I have to ask, what's your worst airsoft injury? I've heard some horror stories before, but what's yours? Nothing comes to mind for actual injuries. I've had some scrapes, some falls, things like that. But I'll tell you the scariest thing that's ever happened to me in airsoft. I was a dumb kid. This was way before the channel. I was maybe in 9th, 10th grade. I'm maybe even younger than that. And we were playing airsoft at this place that we shouldn't. That used to be a rock quarry. and we were playing at night because like, wouldn't that be cool? And I fell off the cliff and landed on another smaller one, like 4 feet down. But if I was, 20 feet further or 20 feet back, I would have fallen like 30 feet and died. So that was terrifying. I didn't really get hurt. I landed like, fell over. Yeah, and that's when I started like looking for actual airsoft fields where I wouldn't die. And yeah, so I haven't had any like really bad injuries. The only other scary thing I can think of is like when a BB sneaks under my lenses. I've had that happen like 3 or 4 times where it just kind of like rolls up my nose, hits the goggle, and then bounces around in there. That's always terrifying. Like I like stop for a second and I'm like, ooh, So yeah, I wish I had a better answer than that. But yeah, I really have been lucky that I haven't gotten seriously hurt in this hobby before. Thank you to everybody who submitted questions for today's video. I apologize that I can't get to every single one just because of time constraints. However, if you're asking about where's my kit, it's soon, and some other questions are things that I'm just going to turn into fully fledged videos. So if you didn't get your question answered, make sure to submit it for the next one. I think the way that we're going to do this is going to be simple. If you want to get your question into the next video, just leave a comment on this one and I will check them when the next Q&A comes up. Again, channel members get a guaranteed spot in those videos, but that's going to do it for today. If you want to see another piece of content from the channel, why don't you click on this one right up here. This will be one of my personal favorites, or if you want one that YouTube recommends, check out right over here. But my name is Lane, and I'll see you all next time.